They're wonderful.
Yeah. It's on Zoom. Okay. Spread that around. It's like church, nobody wants to sit. We'll get started here in just a little bit. Good. Thanks for coming tonight, everyone. Appreciate your intent. Appreciate you coming out. My name is Dave Wellman. I am the Director of Communications for the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority. And we're here tonight to talk about the potential for a transit development district in Beverly Shores and Pines. With me tonight to help explain all of this is Aaron Kowalski from MKS State. They're an urban planning firm based in Indianapolis, as well as Dave Reynolds, who is with Policy Analytics. They are a financial consultant. So just to give you a little quick background, for those of you who don't know anything about the RDA, we were founded in 2006. We serve Lake and Porter County. Our goal is to help assist with major infrastructure projects in Northwest Indiana, especially ones across jurisdictions like the one we'll be talking about tonight. We've done a number of projects, including Market Park East in Gary, we have building in George Beach in East Chicago. Many of you seen the pavilion in Wolf Lake. That was a project of ours. Also the extension of the runway at the Chicago International Airport. And of course, most recently, we've been providing a substantial amount of funding and been acting as the state's fiscal agent on the double track and Westlake projects. So we're really excited to see those coming to fruition. Now, it's terrific. And this, of course, concerns that because these transit development districts are intended to take advantage of the improved rail service to drive growth and development of jobs and all that good stuff here in Northwest Indiana. But before I get too deep into that, I will turn it over to Aaron to tell you all about TDDs, and I will go man the Zoom station. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks everyone for joining. This is a pretty informal meeting, so if you all have questions as we're going through it, please feel free to ask them. We'll also have some time at the end for Q&A. As Dave mentioned, he's got a Zoom set up, so this will be recorded, and we will put this recording on the RDA's website for this project, www.nwitdd.com. So that will be available for those that you might want to send this presentation to who couldn't attend this evening. So with that, we're here to talk about a potential transit development district in Beverly Shores and Pines. This conversation has grown from several conversations we've had with the town of Beverly Shores over the last couple of years, as well as most recently a joint conversation between town of Beverly Shores leadership and town of Pines leadership, This is an informational meeting, so this is the first step of the process. No decisions have been made at all. So really, we're here to educate, inform, and provide information to you all, as well as receive feedbacks. It'll be up to the councils of both Beverly Shores and Pines to decide if they want to move forward and have the Regional Development Authority assist them in the creation of a boundary. So that's where we are today. And I'll go through a series of slides. You all know where we are today, up here in the town of Pines. And then there's the Beverly Shores station, kind of the historic station in Beverly Shores. So as Dave mentioned, this project is related to the double track rail project. So the state of Indiana legislature created the ability for special economic development districts to be created around the stations. And so as we have been thinking about Beverly Shores and Pines over the last several years, knowing that there's not a lot of commercial development along US 12, we've had several conversations about, how do we potentially draw an economic development district that would assist both communities. And so that's really what I'm here to talk about today. I know this text is pretty small, but I'll break this down for you, and we'll also have this presentation there on the website as well as recorded. There is information on these boards. We will leave these boards in this room. So if you all want to come and see them at a later date, they will be available. But in 2017, the Indiana General Assembly created special legislation and tasked the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority with incentivizing, guiding, and promoting economic development along the stations, around the stations along the South Shore lines. If you do so, they created these special transit development districts. They act very similar to a tax increment finance district. What a tax increment finance or TDD district is the ability to capture property tax from a distinct boundary, reinvest that money back into the community. If there were to be a TDD boundary drawn that would capture property in both towns, the town of Beverly Shores, the town of Pines, the increment collected in that community would stay in that community. So increment collected in Pines could be spent in Beverly Shores and vice versa. However, there could be opportunities to use those funds to help pay for infrastructure improvements. And that's what we've been hearing, at least in some of our initial conversations with both council leaderships, is potentially this could be a mechanism to help communities eventually get sewers. And so this is part of that beginning of that conversation. As far as the state statute is concerned, the things that are defined here are the district would last between its creation in 2047. The district cannot exceed 320 acres in area and would need to be contiguous, would have to follow road right of way. And any dollars that are generated in this district would then be reinvested in the district, and it would be a collaboration between the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority and the local communities. We've done this for 12 communities so far. The nearest is Michigan City, looking at their downtown area around their new 11th Street station. We've also developed one in Porter, Indiana, kind of around the US 20 Tremont Road area that also kind of captures a portion of their downtown and connects to the station. Those are the two nearest boundaries. Currently, we're having conversations with you all, as well as the cities of Valparaiso, which has a bus station in their downtown area that is eligible, as well as looking at South Bend Airport. So we've been working for the last several years all over Northwest Indiana creating these districts. These districts are starting to see economic development potential and reinvestment. And we know one of the barriers in both the Pines and Beverly Shores is the lack of sewers. There's not a lot of developable property, we understand that, and we understand there's a desire of both communities to really maintain that small town character. So the role of the RDA here is kind of lead facilitator in this process if the communities do decide that they want to move forward in this process. So that's why we're having this meeting today, to provide information. And so what the RDA does if the communities desire to move forward is we will convene a group, we will meet, we will do analysis, and we will look to figure out the best way to draw a boundary to maximize future development potential, as well as leverage businesses that are already paying property taxes. And we'll also collaborate with both towns to understand if there's opportunities to work with the state and other entities to help get projects done. So the regional significance, I think you all know it, but you know, the South Shore line, you know, goes all the way to South Bend, but truly, you know, I'd say the connection to Chicago really does end in Michigan City. You all are very near Michigan City. And if you go into Chicago, they have a lot more commuter transit lines. Indiana will have two. The metro system is huge. And so really, this is helping leverage the investment in both rail lines, but it's specific to this area, the South Shore line. And we're already seeing economic development potential. You see what's going on in Michigan City. Very similar to what has occurred over the last several decades in the Chicagoland area. So really looking to harness transit in a way to uplift the communities, but do so in a way that's true to each community's economic growth path. If this boundary is created, both communities independently will retain land use and zoning control. So you all will control whatever projects might come to the table that then could help support economic development in these areas. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions so far. And then I'm going to go through kind of a very 101 level presentation on how we develop the boundary. And again, if others have questions as we're going through, feel free to ask. I'll pause, see if there's any questions or comments so far. So the focus here, what is a transit development district? The focus is on promoting transit-oriented development. Now, that's different in every community. In the case of a community, you know, such as in Beverly Shores and Pines, it would be just good quality development, likely along the US 12 corridor, really optimizing land that would be available for redevelopment. We've heard from both communities that while there's not a lot of property that is developable because of the proximity to the national park, state park, there is some. And so how do we leverage that opportunity in a way that provides economic tools and strategies to support local communities to implement quality development? And another thing that's important about this is, you know, this is not just a boundary, this is a complement to the economic growth path of the communities, and it's different for each community. Again, the RDA, we bring technical resources to the table. In addition, the RDA has the ability, if a TDD district is drawing, to help with bonding capacity, to help with interactions and meetings downstate to see if we can get state leaders to help be involved in projects. And I keep bringing up sewer because we think that's probably the key thing. Is we've heard from both communities that is really difficult and expensive to attain, but we've also heard that long-term that may be a desire. So how do we get there? And so what is a TDD? What is a TDD not? So TDD, as I mentioned earlier, it's a half-mile, 320 acres special economic development boundary. It's approved by the state budget committee, which is a subset of the state legislature. So what we would do is go through a process with you all, and once both councils would say, yeah, we're good with this, we agree, we ask for a letter of support. We have 2 meetings with the RDA board. as well as public information sessions like this, where we get public feedback and answer questions, and then we go downstate. This has been done a couple times now. We've taken, as I mentioned, 12 boundaries downstate so far in 2 different tranches in the last 2 years. The most recent being this past fall. We anticipate going back to the state again this fall with a couple more boundaries. So that's what this is. This is not zoning. This is not comprehensive planning. This is not a city or town sponsored planning process. We're not going to take any property. The RDA is not buying property. We're not partnering with developers. But if there were a developer or an investor that wanted to participate, if the TDD boundary is drawn, and if the towns were to say, yeah, we support this development, we like it, such as the investment that's getting ready to go into the Barclays property, for instance, that's the kind of thing that we would collaborate locally on. We're not creating low-income housing, and we're not the Nifty rail. Well, Dave mentioned the RDA is the fiscal agent for the rail. We're not the railroad. So statutory requirements has to be contiguous, again, half a square mile, 320 acres. This is an example boundary. This is not an actual boundary in Gary, but you can see how it's kind of irregular in shape. We would anticipate if we were to draw a boundary for your communities, that it would be irregular. Preliminarily, it would likely include properties along US 12. In specific non-residential properties along US 12, there may be an opportunity to connect up to US 20 in a couple areas as well. As I mentioned earlier, they capture the growth in local income and property tax and reinvest it. It doesn't raise your taxes, but it ensures that the dollars collected in the district can get reinvested back in that district. And that's important if you all have an infrastructure project. And so, again, reinforcing local community retains all land use and zoning control. You all don't have TIF districts today as far as we understand, but we also will have kind of interaction with local communities on what we call a memorandum of understanding. So the RDA, if this boundary was formed, would sit down with each community, hammer out the details on how those dollars get reinvested back in the community. There's 2 public hearings required before the RDA board. Those are a publicly available meeting, and then in addition to that, we do a public information session where we would invite people back into a space like this a couple times during the process. This does not cost the local units dollars, so this is not an effort that the 2 town councils are going to get a bill for. I think that's also important to underscore. This is something that the RDA is doing as part of their state statutory mandate. Again, we take it down to state for review. So MOU, once everybody's good with the boundary established, we come back to the local communities with a memorandum of understanding, and it functions as an agreement. It can be amended over time by both parties. And really it's how the government strategy to allow for projects to be funded and for dollars to be flowing back into it. So all that said, if we were to go through that process, it really is a 4-step process. So becoming familiar with the area, working with community leadership and as many members of the community as they'd like to involve in this process. This is a great size group here. So really appreciate you all coming out. We would work with each community hand in hand to draft the boundary. We're not going to include properties in the boundary that the communities don't want to include. So this is really about providing a resource for the community to control their growth, but then also have an extra economic development tool. We'll go through once we get feedback on the boundary, and we'll revise it. So we'll take feedback from the public, from the councils, revise that boundary, and once everyone's good with it, we would ask for letters of support before taking it to the RDA board. So the value here that we bring to it's the structure to implement transit-oriented development, as I mentioned, is different in each community, but good quality development along US 12 in this case. To leverage public investment to attract capital and increased return on investment. Access to tax increment from property and local income taxes creates a broader revenue source for both communities to reinvest in these areas. The RDA's involvement also helps on the technical side, but then also promotes confidence, as the TDD process may allow projects in areas to obtain favorable rates through bonding from the Indiana Finance Authority, so not hitting the local communities' ability to bond, but allowing for bonding through the RDA as a kind of a quasi-governmental agency. So this partnership is all about facilitating connections, helping connect you all to additional funding sources as well as resources, and a coordinated point of contact. David, Vince, Dave Wellman, we've been working on this for the last several years. We're helping a lot of communities in a lot of different ways in the region. So that's really why we're here today. And this is kind of my hard sell. So potential reasons here, as we see it, to develop a transit development district. We understand while you all have water, there's not sewer, or at least I know it goes to the Pine School, but not broadly in the area. So sanitary and sewer extensions, we think that there's an opportunity to leverage this TDD boundary in a way that could allow for us to go to the state revolving program, have conversations with IDEM and other agencies to try to promote upgrades to sewers in this area. And that's a benefit to local property owners, because if we can get it done in a way that's coordinated and supported, we have this TDD revenue source as well as potential revenue sources from the state helping in the process. It could greatly reduce the burden upon the local communities. We know that some of you are replacing your septics, some of your septics are in great shape. And with that in mind, this is an ability to think through that. US 12 is a scenic byway with the national park. Both of these communities are right along that US 12 corridor. Michigan City's seeing development and investment in their downtown area and the lakefront. We believe that that's going to continue to march further east all the way towards Chesterton and border and beyond. And so I think it's an opportunity now, while there's not a ton of local interest in this area, to begin to set up this strategy that you can begin to capture those dollars for reinvestment if and when those developments do occur. Destination-based development, we talk about places like Bartlett's. Thompson 12, I know it's closed, but I remember going there growing up. It was a great destination. Places like, the Goblin and the Grocer, people are coming to these communities and they're looking for things to do if they're going to the national park. And so this is another opportunity to capture that money and reinvest it. So if we were to move forward with drafting boundaries for you all, this would be a task that we would take on as soon as you all are ready. We would anticipate, essentially, if you all said, yeah, we want to do this, working closely with you all throughout the summer, spring and summer, to arrive on that boundary. And then our goal would be to take it downstate in the fall, probably in the month of October, with the goal of getting it established by the end of this year. So that's the timeline that we would recommend. That timeline doesn't work with you all. We're absolutely happy to work with you, but just wanted to be upfront about what we're doing and kind of where we're headed. And I would welcome questions. As I mentioned, we've got a website, we've got some boards. I'm happy to go back to slides, re-explain things, go into more detail. But really, this is a public information session. We wanted to make sure, after hearing from both councils, that we inform the public about what we talked with the councils about and got comments. And so therefore, both of those bodies could understand the public's thoughts and sentiment before making a decision on whether or not to move forward with this boundary. So I welcome questions or comments from folks here, please.
If a TDD were established, how long would it remain in effect?
It would remain in effect till 2047. So it was established in 2017, the legislation, and current legislation would keep it in effect till 2047. Please.
So when you talk about incremental taxes, is that over the baseline that we currently have that's reinvested, or is all the tax?
It would be
revenue
growth.
from that, or it'd be growth? Okay.
So it would be new increment, and so a
So
lot
we
of.
already have the base.
You already have the base, you're maintaining your base, but as properties were to be reinvested in or developed over time, you would capture that increment rather than it going back to the overall taxing body. Please.
Is the downstate money, is that 100% or is that a percentage of the whole?
David, maybe you can explain that, kind of how the dollars flow.
Sure. But you said that the state dollars, I mean, it's really, it's capturing the local dollars that's generated here. So there's not any state dollars that are coming in. It's capturing the incremental growth of local property and local income tax. Now those dollars, property taxes stay locally and is handled at the county level. Income tax does go downstate and then gets distributed back up to the county and then spread within the county across the formula. So under a TDD, the incremental growth of local income tax would actually ensure that those local income tax dollars come back to either the town of Pines or the town of Beverly Shores, as opposed to going through the normal formula that may send it here or may send it somewhere else within the county. Did that answer the question?
Not completely.
Okay.
So say a sewer line, you want to read a sewer line. Is there money up front to be able to get that done and then some of this stuff pays it back? Or you know, how is it getting, how is
Well,
that?
that'd be part, okay, if you're specifically talking about the sewer, I mean, it would be, there is the state revolving loan fund, which is state dollars and federal dollars that are available to communities to advance and improve sewer systems.
And that's a grant or?
It can be a grant, it can be a loan. I mean, there are many structures that can be set up. I mean, we would just have to, if that's the path we want to go down, we would just have to spend some time working with the community, working with the councils to come up with how can we do this and what's the best way to do that. So there are both grants and loan programs at the state and federal level.
And so once you say you get a grant or something, you actually do a sewer system, so you're generating a little bit more interest in developing the retail and even residential along Route 12. And so that's when, you know, you start being able to take advantage of the increased real estate taxes.
Right.
et
And
cetera.
the increased income tax, yeah.
Right, so
Right.
there, you know,
So it's kind of, the thought here is we need this infrastructure development to occur first,
right,
so that other development can occur.
right, and that's where there's the potential to get money from the government, whether it's a grant or something.
Right.
Usually a grant is only a partial amount of the total, I think, right? And so they're looking for skin in the game for any community to do something like that, right?
More than likely that there would be costs involved in the community as well.
Correct.
Cost to the taxpayers?
I mean, depending on how it'll be structured, there could be cost to the taxpayers or to the users of the system, yes.
That depends on the project.
It depends on the project and how it's set up.
The TDD itself is not an additional tax.
Oh, absolutely not, absolutely not.
You talk about the ability for additional buying capacity opportunities too.
Yeah, there's one of the things that the TDD brings to the table for communities is the ability for the RDA to be the agent that you know, kind of acts as the financing agent and do the bonding for the project. And so that would bring forward advantages to where you essentially would be borrowing, if you will, against the credit of the state as opposed to the credit of the individual. so that the interest rate is gonna be, advantageous underneath a RDA bond. So the overall project cost would be lower.
Well, I think to answer your question, I think the idea is that you set up this 20-year structure where where our communities could get loans or grants or both. And then hopefully there's enough growth in the area that growth pays for everything that we're doing.
Right, yeah, I mean, I was trying to hedge my bet because it just depends on how it's structured.
Right.
I just didn't want to stand
Yeah,
up
that's
there and
the
say,
idea. That's how I understood. Does
Yeah.
that sound right?
yeah, I mean, it's dependent on how it's put together and how it's structured. Yeah.
But it gives us the ability to take on a big project and have
And it's spread that
future
cost over a period of time, yes, absolutely.
The other thing the RDA can help with, so if you were to create a TDD, it doesn't commit you to, sign up for sewer, okay? It's the first step in a process of understanding, an economic development tool that could help with that process. There could be lots of funding sources, state, federal, et cetera, that could go into that. RDA's bonding capacity can help as well. But I think another benefit is this team here can help at no cost to the communities with that technical expertise, so that you all are making informed decisions down the line.
Just a point of interest is that the RDA 10, 15 years ago funded the town of Pine's first comprehensive plan, as I recall.
Yeah.
$250,000 something?
I think it was like 2009.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But your comprehensive plan was funded by that RDA.
What did that do?
It-
It funded a comprehensive plan
That
that
called
allowed
for sewer infrastructure. I mean, primarily amongst other things, but
I guess what I'm trying to say is, what was the material return on that money that you invested? Did anything happen in the town plans?
It was a program that was, the state of Indiana required all towns to do, but we didn't have the money. I wasn't on the board a long time ago, I was long. And so we didn't have the money for it, and I think it was Waltham got together with the RDA to get this set up so that we could suffice the requirement from the state that we had a comprehensive plan. I don't know if they did anything with it. I do know that we had it. And, it's established and it's there, I don't know what it says.
Would there be a possibility that you guys would help with, like, coming up with a PER, the preliminary engineering report for a project? Is that something that could come out of your, not even the funding, but as an exercise so that we got a better feel for what we're looking at?
so David, maybe I can speak to that.
Two answers. One, I'm not gonna, there's kind of two different pots of money. There's the RDA money, okay? And then there's the TDD money. And the TDD money is kind of, I guess, what I'm talking about as I'm speaking here. I mean, I'm not gonna speak for the RDA, whether or not the RDA would step up again and help in that regard like they did with the comprehensive plan. I don't know. That's, as they say, above my pay grade. But on the TDD, those type of soft costs are eligible costs that could be used for those type of things. Now, you kind of get into that issue of, egg and the chicken, which one comes first? You gotta make the plan so the development occurs, but you can't get the money to develop, so you have a little bit of that you gotta work through. But from a standpoint of the TDD dollars, those are eligible costs that we could certainly talk through and see if we can come up with a plan to do something like that.
Other questions or concerns, comments?
So can you explain to me the difference between RDA and TDD? There's a lot of alphabets out there. And I just don't understand the difference.
Okay, fair enough. So as Mr. Wellman said, the RDA was created by statute in 2005,
2006, yeah.
started in 6. And the RDA is funded through member dues that Lake and Porter County pays, as does East Chicago, Hammond, and
Gary.
Gary. So there's 5 entities that pay member dues into the RDA. And then those dues is what the RDA uses for the projects that they've been doing for nearly 20 years, including now helping in support of the double track and the West Side projects. So that's the RDA. Then the TDD, Transit Development Districts, which are these economic development districts that the General Assembly created in 2017. Those dollars are separate from the RDA dollars because they are essentially an economic tool to capture local dollars. So it's capturing the growth that occurs in local property taxes, and local income taxes that's held by the RDA to return back to the community. So that's kind of the difference. Does that help?
Yeah, not really, but.
Yeah, sure.
Please. So the state invented the RDA to help with,
What does that stand for?
Regional Development Authority.
Okay.
And so the state gave them money to do stuff. And when they first started, they did things like the Portage Lakefront, the Hammond Lakefront, the East Chicago Lakefront. The state had rattled off. And then they funded some trails, some of the bridges and things like that, because they were doing this development. That went
So
on.
they funded the development of those areas.
Yes, they did fund those and they helped facilitate those. So
Yeah.
they did that for a while, and then there was some criticism that they should do more economic development and less trails. And they did more economic development, but they're broad reaching. They were state funded for a while to distribute some of this money to these communities, like they say, the member communities. And then in 2017, when they took this project for the double track to make the NICD thing be faster, so that you could, the idea was to get from Michigan City to downtown in an hour. That was the goal at the time. And so that took all kinds of resources, federal, state, all kinds of things. As they were helping to make that happen, another opportunity came along, and that is to make this work and to benefit from it. Everywhere where there's a train station, they made a state law that said these are transit development districts, or could be. And so that would be a way of the towns that have the train stations to get this opportunity to develop around them. So Michigan City, if they build apartments there or stores, it will attract more people to use the train and live close to it, ride their bike to it, walk to it, go to Chicago. And so that's the incentive, is to make this an economic center around or within close proximity of a train station, to make this investment more viable, and to encourage it near the train station so people don't have to drive as far, and to benefit the communities that have this. And so you're seeing it in Gary with the Milner stuff, Hammond, East Chicago, Michigan City, and all of those, but it's attracting other developers. So the train built a station with the help of the RDA and all kinds of grants and federal things, but they're not building. They don't want to be a building owner per se. They want to have somebody else build a shopping center and apartment close to the train. Essentially, right? And then those developers, they get a tax incentive to do it, and the town gets to pull those taxes separate and reinvest in that to draw more people or more investment in it. Is that,
So yes, that helps the vote.
and that's,
John Hines doesn't have a station, so that's what's confusing me, I guess.
Well, if we would, I mean, we would draw, if the town would want us to, we could draw the TDD that would include the Beverly Shore Station into the town hall.
So starting from the Beverly Shore Station,
Yeah.
they extend out into the
Yeah.
TDD out into the South Park.
So it's limited to 320 acres. And it has to have the station. So as long as the station's in there, then we can just draw it and our focus, I mean, as Aaron talked about, it's mainly along US 12, but we can go along US 12 and pick up Beverly Shores
Yes.
and downtown.
And when we talked with officials from Beverly Shores, they expressed that there's not a lot of local property in Beverly Shores, so, maybe we could extend it to the Pines and both communities together.
Maybe if it does go into fines, if it does go into fines, that any increment collected from Pines property stays in Pines, it doesn't come back to that.
So, thank you. So the TDD in Pines, those dollars would stay in the town of Pines, and the TDD in Beverly Shores, those dollars would stay.
A portion of
And is it 100% of the, it's not impacted by the levy cap? So it's really a benefit to the town because they're capturing all of the benefit in the incremental town portion of the property tax instead of having a budget capped by 5%.
You may need to say that again. I'm not
So right now,
5% is
right
your
now,
max levy, is your 5%?
Five percent of our max levy is recently been set.
That's trying to figure out what your 5%.
It's also a formula, of the growth, but they capture. They.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does not impact your max levy growth. I mean, essentially
But we get the benefit of the entire amount of the town's portion of the property tax on the incremental assessment that goes into TDD and then comes back. Is that an accurate statement?
I don't want you to, what I'm pausing is, you're not avoiding circuit.
Not avoiding circuit breaker,
Okay,
but we're
all right.
avoiding the cap.
You're
On-
avoiding the max levy cap,
Yes.
but you're not avoiding circuit breaker. Okay. And then ultimately what happens as development occurs and your AV goes up, tax rate comes down.
Right.
And circuit breaker loss goes down, which provides more revenue to the
So
town.
it's a double benefit.
Over time,
We
over
get
time.
the TDD money into TDD that doesn't go to our budget as part of the cap.
Right.
And we,
As development occurs and your tax rate goes down, circuit breaker loss goes down
so it could be a windfall over time
over time.
to the town budget.
So in simple terms, that means that more money would be available to both communities, is that correct?
Over time, yeah, as development occurs.
Do we have any idea that 320 acres, how far that extends into the town of Pines? Will we continue it from Beverly Shores?
before they answer that, on one of Aaron's slides, there's an opportunity to expand one after it's established, and we can go up to a mile. In one of the slides, it starts as 320 acres, which is a half.
Half a square mile.
Square mile. And then there's an opportunity to expand it to a square mile. And ours would be a very long skinny square mile.
So we haven't drawn a boundary, but we do believe that, there's enough acreage kind of along US 12 between the Beverly Shores Station and county line, to get all the way to the Michigan City corporate boundary, which would be important if, sewer was the goal, okay, of this TDD boundary. Is you want to get it all the way to Michigan City so you can have that economic tool along that entire corridor. As was mentioned, this boundary can be expanded once up to 640 acres, that's 1 square mile area. The way that happens is both communities would come back to the RDA and say, hey, we're seeing economic development. We'd like you to explore making this bigger for us. If the towns don't want that, the RDA is not gonna initiate that process, but it is a mechanism in the statute that additional property, could be included in that.
I know I did just a preliminary, just how far we could go with the acreage. And you could do almost all 12. You could wrap 520 and you could go out 20 in different directions. And just because you're not going when you think of an acre or half mile, when you squash it down to maybe being 100 feet on each side, or 200 feet on each side, 300 and some acres is a lot of distance.
The other thing is
Do you
road
have a
right of way
chi-
does not count against the total.
Yes. Are you able to bring up by chance the Ogden Dunes portage?
I don't have it, but it is on the NWITD.com and we can make sure, but it's not.
That's a good example of two communities, and then you'd be surprised how far they stretched the acreage. They do a lot of coverage, even up into that Ameriplex where the Bass Pro place is in the train station. They reached up into that area. So it's surprising how far you can go with a half mile of acreage.
How far do we have though coming up 12, the national park? I mean, your national park owns a lot.
So we would not include any national park property in the
Right.
TDD boundary.
I'm just saying, how do you guys know how much there is there? Because what Kansas Ave is national park.
I mean, you
That's
really
right
could go
there.
from the Nifty track, at least one property north of 12, if not a few properties north of 12. We would not capture single family properties. So this would be primarily commercial properties that we would capture as part of the transit fund.
Does our continuation have to be all commercial? Because we have houses and residential dotted in this area that would make blind spots in this 320 acres.
You could include residential properties, like for instance along 12. If those properties were to redevelop, either basically as your residential, single family residential properties in the state of Indiana are capped at 1% property tax, and they are not eligible for inclusion in a TIF district. The same is true in a TDD boundary. So you could include them, but they wouldn't spin off increment unless they were redeveloped, if that makes sense.
You mean
Because we're
redevelop
basically-
it into
Into
retail
a
or
commercial
something?
property of some
Because we're basically from Brown Road to
So,
Kansas.
commercial properties,
It's almost all residential, except for a few businesses down along the inside of it.
so commercial properties would pay, into the TDD, multifamily would pay into the TDD. Industrial properties would pay into the TDD, if that makes sense. Reynolds, is there anything I've left out?
I think the question is whether that creates a gap that would affect your district. Whether a lot of residential would be a problem, or can you go around them?
You can go around it, or if the towns felt that, hey, this house at some point might redevelop into a coffee shop or something like that, I'm just throwing it out there, you could include it. It really would be up to the community.
But you don't have.
You don't have,
You're not gonna create a issue by.
right, yeah, got it.
And we've used the roadway right away to make it contiguous to connect. So if you have a commercial here, US 12 would be the connector.
Thank you.
That also gives them more ability to lengthen.
Right.
Does that get like subtracted out and then they can look farther? Is there residential
Because
dotted
they're-
in there?
Yeah, you kind of,
Okay,
Yes, because like if you're coming this way from Brown Road, you have residential and then you have the old grocery store.
Right.
Big, and then you got Heinz Bank, and then you got houses and those would be off. And then the corner where it was just torn down, that would be commercial first. And then you got some more residential.
what about, vacant land? Does that,
vacant land is very smart to include in the TDD boundary because
I mean, there's
the
some.
assessed value is low.
And your base is
right,
not zero, but it's low.
And even underutilized commercial property, because right now in Beverly Shores, we struggle a lot just because of the septic, for example, with the old Bartlett's, they had to annex some property they owned in Pine Township to help meet their needs to put in septic, to be properly sized. But sewer, it changes the game. I know there's a few motels along 12 here in Pines. One's very viable, one's, I don't know the story behind it, but I'm sure just having a sewer going through that area, their ability to hook up could make some of these businesses more viable and less underutilized. That's the case.
If they went with the sewers, would they require everyone in the town of Pines to hook up the sewer? I'm asking because some people might not be able to afford that.
I don't think we're not there in that step of the process yet. I mean, we're really in kind of the fact finding stage. Reynolds, I don't know if there's anything.
No, I mean, that's would be my answer as well. I mean, it's too early to say how that would be set up.
I think when we did the water service in Pine Beverly Shores, people had an option to hook up or not, and then you pay a certain amount to what you're doing, and that could occur over a period of years. I think that it wouldn't. I don't think that you would be forced to do it, but it's there when you're ready to do it, because in some of the septics, I don't know how else they fail, but I mean, if they fail, that might be another option.
What we're hearing, what we've heard from council people is, some people have enough property to put in a new septic if their septic fails, and some people don't. And for the people that don't have enough property, it really becomes a burden. Please.
Also, about 3 years ago, I think it was, the Dow was in business and everything, but they had designed a septic system for that, but it had to be monitored, and they exceeded whatever their intentions were, and they were put on probation for a while because they were using more water than what they had been designed for. This type of thing would solve those issues, and other businesses wouldn't have to worry about that type of thing anymore.
Right.
And the other thing is, like this, on the 320 acres, if you could imagine, a 16th of a mile wide, 8 miles long, that equals a half, 320 acres. A 16th of a mile, if anybody else here grew up in Chicago like I did, is the short width of a city block. You got the length of the city block is 220 yards, the width is 110 yards. It's a 16th of a mile, so you figure a 16th of a mile. 16th of a mile times 8 miles long is 320 acres. So you could, make that wider and shorter, or whatever you want to do, or do all this kind of crazy things you're talking about. It's just a visual, if you can imagine that.
Yeah, it's helpful. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Please.
We're trying, we're trying to visualize, how you can stretch 320 acres to 8 miles worth. But if we went to the next step with your agency, you would draft something that we could look at, right?
We put together a couple options, yes, and say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this?
Yeah, and that would probably answer a lot of questions, if we saw,
Yeah, and we would want to come to you as our first meeting with a bunch of different options. This is an information session, and if you all want to move forward, then our next step would be come back with some options to.
But one of the first places we would look, Aaron, you're the planner, I'm not, but when we would look at the 2009 comprehensive plan for the town of Pines.
Yeah, we would.
Somebody said, well, what have you ever done with it?
Is that available?
That would be one of the first documents we would look at. What did the town want?
It's online somewhere, I have no idea.
It's what?
It's online somewhere.
We can.
Show me, I have to ask Shelby.
And is it only economic development? I know you said they wanted to staff with all the trails and go economic, but can it be both, or it has to be all
You're-
economic?
So your TDDs can fund things like trails, sidewalks,
Just thinking of the bicycle
beautification.
trail.
Yeah, it can fund any of those things as well as hard infrastructure like utilities. It can be used as an incentive for development, things like that.
Would you be able to go back to that slide where you had the 4 steps that you're, recommending?
So at the simplest,
That was the 4 steps, yeah.
this one, yeah, so at the simplest level, so if you all wanted to move forward with this, we would work spring and summer of this year, hand in hand with the local communities to achieve a consensus on the boundary. Then towards the end of the summer, we would have public meetings, so we'd get back together with a larger group like this, have boards, another presentation, more Q&A. We would receive feedback from the public. A lot of times we hear, hey, include this property, don't include this property. That's the kind of feedback that causes us to make that boundary more finalized. And then what we would do is when the local units would say, hey, we're ready to go, we ask for letters of support from both councils. That's a step that's not required in statute, but the RDA board does that as an assurance that the communities are on board with this. So letter of support. A lot of councils do it as a resolution, resolve to support this. We take that as well as the boundary to the RDA board, not once, but twice. The public is invited to both of those meetings, so we have a local public input session as well as 2 required public hearings before the RDA board that are publicly noticed. And then the last step would be once the RDA votes, the board votes to accept those boundaries, we take them downstate to the state budget committee, and we would do that likely in probably October of 2024. So we have some time. But we would probably want to know in the next month or so if the communities would want us to move forward in this collaborative process. The boundary is not final until we get that letter of support and the second RDA board meeting happens. So sorry, budget committee happens. So it's not final until it goes downstate.
In this process, you know, you mentioned letter of support, and then, you know, we proceed trying to get set up. All that obligates either town to is becoming part of this project. It doesn't, no requirement to spend any money, no requirement to do anything.
No.
Just join it
So you have
and
this,
see what happens.
yeah, it's an additional economic development tool.
Yeah, so it's almost like there's no negative. Well, that's my opinion, but it's just like you're joining something that could be beneficial.
So are you joining RDA? Is that what you're saying? You become a member?
No.
Are we a member?
Yeah.
Town of Hines is already a member. Okay. And Beverly Shores too then.
Every municipality and every citizen in Porter County is like that.
To John's point, you know, I can agree with him. I don't really see a downside of the communities that have already been doing this. Have there been anything negative come out of this that you've seen? Because they've been a couple of them 2 years into, or a year into it, I guess.
I mean, the communities are already starting to see economic development interest. Some communities are going after grant dollars, and if they're in a transit development district, they're going after grant dollars. They say they're in a state economic development district. That's hopeful. I think a lot of developers have confidence when a community is working with the RDA, because it's just another, especially for small communities, it's another technical resource that is helpful, but doesn't come as a cost to the community. So those are the benefits at the most fundamental level we're seeing so far. Again, the communities are controlling their own land use and development, so it really is incumbent upon the community to have a project they like if economic development occurs. and say, hey, RDA, we want to support this thing. It's not the reverse, so.
And a couple of those communities are kind of talking to us now, we want to expand, we're ready to expand.
I think the other part is just by doing it now versus waiting, is you're setting the basis for the property values now, and so then as the increment, as the value goes up in time, if you waited just another 2 years, and the value went up, you don't get, the increment is not there. It's the increment of value is not set until you get approved by the state budget and pass for approval.
And then with the sunset date set at a hard time, the longer that you wait, the shorter your ability to, somebody we were talking about spreading the costs over a period of time. Well, the longer we wait, then it shortens that window that we have to spread the costs out over time as well.
The biggest difference in value to us is the TIF as strictly property tax, and this TDD is the income tax too. So it's a component.
I was just gonna ask that, does that give you a, tax break for living in an economic development area? No? Okay. But it does for the businesses.
Your local
Gives that
taxes are reinvested back in.
The business doesn't get a tax credit per se on operating. I mean, it's the incremental dollars are used to promote the development of businesses.
Did I understand that, this doesn't impact your, bond limitations because, so it gives you, doesn't use up any of your bond capacity? If you would issue a bond through the TDD or RDA.
Usually I know the answers to these before I ask them about it anyway. Does this take
That's
money?
always dangerous.
I know. Does this take money away from the schools?
I mean, that is the, the ongoing debate that has been going on for years between these tax increment financing proposals. And, so I think the answer to that is, in the eye of the beholder. One side of the argument is, but for this economic development occurring, and generating the revenues, there wouldn't be the dollars in support of the schools. And then you have the other ones that are saying, yeah, but that would have happened anyways, and therefore we would have gotten moves out of it. So, I mean, I'm not trying to avoid your question. It's just, I can stand up here and argue either side.
But the levy for the school does go into the district.
Levy for the schools.
Well, it's a big pot, so
No,
if somebody
it's
pulls out of it.
It comes out of it.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's, the base stays the same. Okay, so the base, the TDD doesn't take anything
The
from
growth
it.
that would have gone to the schools.
The growth that would have gone to the schools
Yeah.
goes to the TDD.
Yeah.
But, and that's the argument of, but that growth wouldn't occur. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It depends on which side you want to talk it on. Yeah, and eventually, my earlier argument is eventually, the idea is that it raises all boats.
Well, is it logical to think that since this is only for commercial development, there's not going to be any additional load put on the school by additional services? The children don't come from commercial developments.
But it's not just, it's not just.
It's not, I mean, it depends on what the community wants. I mean, if the community wants higher density housing as part of your economic development plan, once again, that's up to the community. That's not a decision that the RDA makes.
But
But
what I heard you say was that it's only commercial property, I think.
It's commercial, anything that's not single family.
Anything is not single
Yes.
family. But it can't be, the tax money can't flow to the town unless it's redeveloped into something commercial.
Commercial being anything that's not residential, so a fourplex duplex. Okay,
Okay.
that
Okay, so
would,
you could-
we
you
could
could have-
capture,
you could have
we
lower
could capture,
houses.
we could capture the incremental growth of as low as a fourplex,
Right, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
and then everything above that. And so, but once again, it's the community, that's driven by the community, so it's the community that decides what kind of development they want.
In our case, if sewers is one of the things that we might look at as part of the deal, we're not gonna have that kind of growth on septic.
And, but that's the sort of the thing with this is all of this growth is limited by septics and we will be able to tap into some of these so, and the residential is encouraged because again, the idea of the TDD is to have development, usable, walkable, rideable, accessible development near a train station. So if it's housing or multifamily so that they live there, pay taxes there and commute to Chicago and, get a good paying job to earn a lot that is taxed, because that money goes right back into the community and the TDD. But like Michigan City is, that's gonna be apartments, housing, and stores, yes? Right.
Yeah, right at the station.
Right, and to encourage that, and it's all written into to make that.
And we wouldn't anticipate the density that's occurring in Michigan City.
No, it's not.
Every community.
Yeah, that's what we say, look at everybody's. We talk low income housing.
Not necessarily.
Well, once again, that's up to the community. I mean, that's a decision of the community.
The board would have to decide if they were gonna allow that to be.
I mean, this isn't, the RDA through the TDD, that's not a decision that we make, that all rests with the community.
That was one of the first slides, I think, before you got here, they talked about the fact that they are not pushing for that, that's not something that's.
All
already
land use permits, all that.
Zoning, everything.
Zoning and all states.
Would that change the zoning? I mean, would it have to change?
We have looked into changing our zoning
Right.
along Highway 12 in that area there,
Oh,
and, I have no idea, but it would be something that would be brought up. I mean, it would go before the town first.
This has been good feedback. Other questions, things that we can help with? Appreciate everyone's time today. As I mentioned, our website is nwitdd.com. This presentation is being recorded, so we're going to upload it to the YouTube channel. It'll also be uploaded to the RDA's website, nwitdd.com. There were some requests for the Pines Comp Plan. We'll get that up on that website as well. I've got a stack of cards, so folks are more than welcome to grab my card if you have questions or additional comments after this meeting. And I think what we would ask, kind of as a next step, is for both town councils to consider whether or not they'd like to, with this information, move forward with these boundaries. Dave Wellman, primary contact with the RDA, and we go from there. Dave, is there anything you add to that?
The only thing I'd add is that as part of the legislation, there is a Transit Development District Steering Committee that we have, and a representative, every community that has a TDD gets a representative on that committee. So we would ask the town of Pines to appoint somebody to that body, so you have that additional oversight over what we're doing.
And your meetings are.
It's the third Wednesday, quarterly meetings, third Wednesday of the month. Yeah, in May.
It is virtual.
Yeah, we do it all by Zoom because we're all across the whole, we go to from South Bend to Hammond, so.
So if you could appoint somebody before then, you could participate in the call.
It's open anyways, right?
Yeah, it is a public meeting, so, yeah. Yeah,
And where's it held?
they're all held by Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah.
Small town.
Thanks everyone for your time this evening. We'll stick around for a few minutes in case there's additional questions.